Hey everybody, Foley here for the weekly news recap, the 26th of June to the 2nd of July. Hey Melwan, how's it going? Happy Sunday. I think. I don't know. I can't get into Twitter, so it's gonna be probably a productive Sunday actually, since I won't be doom scrolling. Anyway, let's get into it. So, this week Annapurna had their own showcase as pretty much the last thing for Summer Game Fest. So Annapurna are a pretty big publishing group who do kind of really experimental indie games, tends to be their thing, as well as some safer games. Anyway, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes gets another trailer. So this is from the developer behind Sayonara Wild Hearts, which was this kind of interesting rhythm game. It did a lot better on mobile, to be fair, than it did on console, I think, and it was pretty decent. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is some kind of, as you might imagine, you can see there, it's some sort of time travel-y maze detective type game. It's got a lot of Suda 51 art to it. It's kind of what I'm getting from it. You know, it's like it's got a lot of Killer is Dead. It's kind of got the same kind of harsh shading that you see in No More Heroes, in not Catherine, although that is him. What's the other game? Shadows of the Damned, stuff like that. Anyway, it's a good developer. I'm kind of keen to see how they're going with it. Their art direction has been really interesting, at least with Sayonara Wild Hearts. So we'll see how this goes. The trailer again really gives very little away. Still no release date as far as I'm aware. Dog confirmed. I guess if you want to, you can try to figure out what all that says, but I'm just gonna wait for the internet to figure it out and then I'll look it up. Anyway, that's that's Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. No release date yet, but you can go check all that stuff out on Steam. There's no confirmation of what other platforms it might be coming to. The website we're using here, Rock Paper Shotgun, is a PC-focused one, so it's probably not even going to mention really other consoles. Cocoon has been given a release date. It's going to be out at the end of September 29th. So Cocoon is the next game from the designer behind Limbo and Inside. So it's going to be like a puzzle type thing. The idea with Cocoon is there are multiple nested worlds that you need to jump in and jump out of, to carry objects in and out of these different worlds, solve puzzles within those worlds, and so on and so forth. As you gradually make your way through, I think, like the bigger overworld, the topmost layer, I guess, I think is where you're spending. I was going to say where you're spending a lot of your time, but I don't actually know. Anyway, it's got a lot of that going on for us. The puzzle mechanics and stuff in Inside and Limbo were always really interesting. They had a lot of physics-based elements to them. It's kind of hoping that it's not going to be as trial and error, I guess, as Limbo was. Anyway, Inside maybe not so much. Oh, excuse me. I am barely out of bed. Excuse me. Anyway. So September 29th for Cocoon. Lushfoil Photography Sim is exactly as it sounds. No release date for it or anything like that. This is really only an announcement. So Lushfoil Photography Sim is a photography sim game, but it is, I believe, Unreal 5. And if it's not, it's very impressive if it's not Unreal 5. Impressive even if it is not Unreal 5. The idea is it's going to take you to extremely high fidelity recreations of actual places in the world. The only one of these I've been to is the one that has all the torii gates. It's the Inari Shrine. I forget the first word of it. It's the something Inari Shrine in Japan. Anyway, gorgeous looking. Way too many people there when I went there because it's tourist central. But if you can get to go there, embody it in Unreal instead, yeah, close enough or whatever. It's gorgeous. Now, how well this is actually going to perform on people's PCs, that will probably be something to be checked out. But yeah, it's kind of just drop your drone out into the place or walk about the place yourself, taking pictures and what have you. How much of it is gameplay? Probably not much. Maybe you're given like composition types to find or something like that. Maybe you need to reach a specific point and take a picture from there or something like that. I don't know. I really fucking want to go back to Japan now after seeing that. Anyway, Lush Foil Photography Sim looks really good. No idea when it's coming out. To a T. Okay, so To a T is from the creator of Katamari Damacy and Watam. So it's good. You know it's going to be fucking weird, basically. So To a T is basically this teenager who woke up one day in a T pose and can't leave it. So they're just constantly asserting dominance on everybody. Yeah, the character you're playing is stuck in a T pose. They can't bend their arms or anything like that, so they need help to do various different things. They have their friendly dog who's there to help them do things. How they ever get any clothes on, I don't know. How do they get their shirt on? It's like impossible, what have you. The music video that's playing here, I guess, is quite catchy. It's a very good tune, as is befitting Katamari Damacy. No release date, as far as I'm aware. No platform news, I think. Apparently you can fly if you spin fast enough. And there's platform there. Xboxes and PC. Although I think this is from the X... No. So yeah, Xbox. It must be a Game Pass thing. Flock gets a new deep dive trailer. I'm not going to click into all these trailers because it takes us forever. Flock is a... Actually, I'm going to click into this one. God damn it. So, Flock is... you play this kind of shepherd on the back of this giant bird. You are kind of tending to your sheep flock that I don't think really comes into it in this trailer in particular, because they're talking a bit more about how you gain all these followers who are flocking to you, as it were. This kind of has a sort of Pokemon vibe to it, in that there's a lot of these different strange creatures out in the world, and you can charm them or befriend them or capture them, whatever way you want to put it, whatever mechanic you want to use to have them join your team. And that's it. They just follow you around afterwards. It's an Annapurna game. What do you want? It looks pretty. You know, it looks pretty zen. What they're kind of showing off here is co-op. You know, another person with their own giant bird and their own flock can join you. I think they show off... Okay, so there's your sheep. There's, like, actually the actual gameplay bit is that you're meant to take your sheep out, help them graze, they get woolly, and then you take them back to shear them, and I think that's kind of the deal. Anyway. Still no release date for it, though. Ghost Bike. Or whatever, I've shown all the trailers up to this point, I might as well keep going. Ghost Bike is the next game from the developers from Nidhogg. Nidhogg being probably the best party game I've ever played. It's that or Gang Beasts, honestly, because they're both fantastic. Anyway, Ghost Bike, I thought it's not like that. It's not like a super quick-fire dueling game. Ghost Bike is a cycling game where you are trying to resurrect the spirits of dead ghost cyclist couriers or something like that. The gist of it is you do a lot of cycling races. You cycle around different places that look nice. That's kind of the deal. At least so far, that's all we really know about it. Hopefully we'll have some more information sooner rather than later. Again, who knows when that's coming out? Well, actually, they do know. 2024, next year at some point. Mundawn has already been out before. It's been out on PC for a good while. It is a pretty cool looking horror game. It's got this PS1 vibe to it, but then it also has a kind of monochrome, almost hand-drawn filter put over it, and it just has this really interesting look. I'm going to click on it. It just has this really interesting look to it. Okay, you can't go into full screen when it's embedded, I guess. it just has a really interesting look to it. It's been out on PC for a while, and now it's getting a 9th gen, if you like, update. So Xbox, Xbox Series, PS5, and also Switch. So I might actually get a chance to play it. Bounty Star is a mech bounty hunter game / slice of life sim, I guess. So the idea is just like two halves of the game. You are this sort of retired military veteran who's gone off to kind of start their own bounty hunting gear or bounty hunting outfit, I guess. So half of the game is you going out collecting bounties in your big mech. So mech combat looks decent enough. I need to see a bit more of it, but it looks decent enough. And then the other half of it is improving your mech and then improving that place where you're hanging out, making it a bit bigger, letting you take on bigger bounties, bigger tasks, stuff like that, and getting to know your neighbors. You know, making friends, that kind of thing. So it's got, kind of a two halves thing going on with it. Interesting. I need to see more about the actual mech combat, see if it's decent. Stray is coming to Xbox, that's kind of it. That's all you need to know. It's not coming to Game Pass. So I guess it's either a PlayStation Plus or a Game Pass thing, and they went with PlayStation Plus. Yeah, no actual date, I think. But out eventually on Xbox. It has already been on PlayStation. As I mentioned, it launched with PlayStation Plus, and it's been on PC for a little while now as well. Thirsty Suitors has a release date. It's coming out at the beginning of November. Thirsty Suitors is reverse Scott Pilgrim. In that Scott Pilgrim had to fight off the 7 deadly X's of Ramona Flowers. In Thirsty Suitors, you are fighting off people trying to proposition you or trying to court you, I believe is the deal with Thirsty Suitors. Storyteller is coming to Netflix. Netflix has been gradually gaining more and more interesting games. Storyteller is the latest one. Oxenfree 2 is also coming to Netflix. We played Storyteller on the channel. It was supposed to be a Foley Plays Games a Bit game, but it's so short that we finished it in one sitting. It's a really good game. I really liked it. Its presentation is really good. It was just way too short. Helpfully, the developer has thought, yeah, that game is kind of short, I guess. So here's some new scenarios. Here you go. So the end of September, there'll be a new scenario for Storyteller. Will it be enough to flesh out the game long enough to make it feel like it's long enough? I don't think so. But if they keep doing it, keep adding more scenarios to the game, that'll be interesting. And then they finished with a new Blade Runner game, and it's also Annapurna's very first in-house game. So up until now, Annapurna have been a publishing-only group. They haven't actually developed any of their own games. They've only just published them. So Blade Runner 2033 Labyrinth will be their first internally developed game. Which I guess technically makes an indie game. But whatever. That's kind of the weird thing, I suppose, is that if like EA develop a game and publish it themselves, it's technically an independently published game. Independent just means not first person, or not first party, but anyway. This is entirely a CG trailer. It's set to take place between both of the Blade Runner films. So the gist of it is you're like a retired detective. You're brought in to check over this kind of archival footage to look for places that no longer exist. Because there's been some sort of calamity in between the two films. It feels a bit like the Sam Barlow games, Her Story, Telling Lies, Immortality, that kind of thing. We played Immortality on the channel, it's weird. We don't know anything really about this game yet, other than its setting and maybe some snippets of what could possibly be gameplay. Who knows? Similarly, we don't know when it's coming out, as it doesn't have a release date. And that was it for Annapurna. But that was not it for our updates. Fort Solace is it's kind of claustrophobic narrative maybe horror, possibly thriller type thing set in, I think it's Mars. I don't know. It's set on another planet anyway. Fort Solace, as you might imagine, is this bunker set on whatever planet it's supposed to be. I think it's Mars, but I'm not sure. That has gone silent. Your character is sent in to sort of check up on it. And shenanigans, of course. What shenanigans? I don't know, because the trailer doesn't really show you anything. Just snippets. Just maybe some things are going wrong. The real kind of, I guess, appeal for this game is the voice acting group. You have Roger Clark, who's playing the main character. You may know better as Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. And then Troy Baker, I think, is the main antagonist, who you know from pretty much everything. So, yeah, it's got a pretty decent... it's got a pretty decent voice cast. I believe it's going to be an episodic game. So episode 1 will be out in middle of August of this year. I don't know then if it's monthly or anything like that. They haven't told us anything about the release schedule for the game. To be honest, we don't know a whole lot about the game. And it coming out so soon, that's kind of a worry. On the other hand, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty heavy story-focused game. You know, pretty heavily narrative-focused game, so maybe there's not a whole lot of gameplay to show, which could be another issue. Well, I don't know. Production value is pretty high. How fun of a game it'll be to play is debatable. Anyway, that's Fort Solace. Coming out in the middle of August at some point. Scorn is no longer an Xbox exclusive. It'll be coming to PS5 later in the year. I don't think an actual date is given. October 14th. No, it's unlikely to be before October 14th. Alright, so that's like literally a year. So I guess Halloween, maybe? We might see it. And in news that really shouldn't surprise anybody, but we're going to say it anyway. Perfect Dark, the reboot, it's been rebooted again because it changed hands from the Collective over to Crystal Dynamics. Then Crystal Dynamics was sold to the Embracer Group. And then Xbox is having its merger shenanigans with Activision, so it's kind of fallen behind. Not entirely sure who exactly is in charge of the game right now. Perfect Dark belonging to a lot of different developers over the years. It's currently sitting with Crystal Dynamics, who are partnering with Microsoft Studios to make the game. But they have effectively just restarted development. So pretty much reset the clock on when you thought Perfect Dark reboot was going to come out, because it's pretty much been entirely restarted in development. Okay, and the free Epic game this week is the Dungeon of the Amulet of Chaos. It is a kind of cartoonish, fun time dungeon crawler, tactical RPG kind of thing. So think XCOM, kind of. It doesn't look like it's grid-based, so it's probably closer to something like... Not Fire Emblem. Well, I mean, kind of Fire Emblem. It's just that there's no grid, basically. XCOM is on a grid. Anyway, that's free up until Thursday, and then it will be replaced by something. I don't remember. Something. PlayStation Plus. Okay, so it is the beginning of a new month, so that means PlayStation Plus and Xbox Games with Gold are getting a refresh. So the games that are currently there will be going away probably Tuesday. So you have until then to get the games that are there at the moment. But on Tuesday, you'll be able to play these games. So Call of Duty Blops, Cold War, Alan Wake Remastered, and Endling Extinction is Forever. So going through them, Call of Duty is Call of Duty. You already know what that is. We're going to skip ahead. Alan Wake Remastered is the remastered version of the original Alan Wake that was an Xbox exclusive for a very long time. And now it is available on basically everything except the Switch. We played a little bit of Alan Wake on the channel. It's one of the handful of Let's Plays that I've abandoned. I don't abandon Let's Plays often. And it only really happens when I'm either really frustrated with the game or really bored of the game. And Alan Wake was kind of both, to be honest. I did like the setting and I like the atmosphere of the game. I just did not like the combat at all. I might go back to it because the sequel is coming out soon and the sequel is very different. So I might go back to it before the sequel comes out, but anyway, you guys might enjoy it. It is from Remedy, you know, the Control, Max Payne type people. I'm just kind of surprised that I didn't like the combat because I like the combat in Control. Combat in Control is amazing. I don't know, I just was not a fan of the combat of Alan Wake. Endling Extinction is Forever is the game I'll never play. It's a game I really want to play, but I'm never going to, because you play a fox mother who is trying to take herself and her cubs across the country to try to find a place that is not heavily polluted and somewhere where their family can thrive. However, during your journey, you can lose all 3 cubs. It's entirely possible. So I'm never playing that, because if I never play it, I can't lose them. Roll safe. Anyway, that is PlayStation Plus. Xbox Games with Gold for July, Darkwood, and The Past was around, or When the Past was around. Darkwood is a top-down horror game set kind of out in the wilderness. You wake up, I think, in this cabin in the Darkwood. You don't know how you got there, and you're kind of spending kind of the first day just getting your surroundings. You realize you're not particularly close to civilization. You need to, you know, do the survival stuff, you know, wood, a fire, food, that kind of jazz. Until nighttime comes around, and now you realize, oh, I'm in some sort of monstrous apocalypse situation, and things are trying to murder me. Darkwood's terrifying, honestly. And it's mostly to do with how it handles your vision cone. So you have a vision cone in Darkwood. So think of it as entirely top down, and you have, like, you know, a radial, like a clock. You have a certain angle that you can see at, and everything outside that angle you can't see. So if enemies are chasing you, and you turn to run, you don't know where they are now. You don't know how close they are, because you can't see them, because you're looking straight ahead. If you try to keep looking at them and backpedal, you don't backpedal fast enough. So you need to, like, turn and run, but not know where they are. You might, like, you know, turn around the corner and suddenly there's an enemy comes into your vision cone. And you're like, ah, fuck. It's a pretty scary game. That's all I'm gonna say. And When the Past was around, I don't know what that is. Touching a bittersweet love story of Ida and Owl. Puzzles in a beautifully rendered point. That's a point and click adventure. Hand drawn art, magical score, does stick with you. It's my kind of game. Meditative game that reflects on love, loss, and in a surreal world made up of disjointed rooms. Yeah, that actually does sound exactly like what I would play. Why haven't I played that? It must be like PC only or something like that. Anyway, those are the games with gold for July, Darkwood, and When the Past was around. Those are some of the games you can play eventually. But what if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Master Detective Archives Rain Code. From Spike Chunsoft. It's the developer and creator behind the Danganronpa series. They've kind of written themselves into a corner with Danganronpa 3. So they can't really do Danganronpa 4 just because of just because of 3's story. I won't go into any further than that. So they have to branch off and make their own thing. But from what I've read from reviews, this is effectively Danganronpa 4. Or at least there's a lot of mechanics in common. Like tons and tons of mechanics in common. It is a mystery, murder mystery, that's the way you say it, kind of game. Your master detectives are being killed off. It's your job to sort of figure out who's doing it. There's an oppressive regime that is probably behind it, but you need to figure out who exactly it is behind it. And then kind of randomly, there's a weird dungeon crawling mechanic thrown in that, again, reading from the reviews, is not great. Which is not surprising because the developer is probably best known for kind of visual novel stuff. So it's probably not surprising that the dungeon crawly bit is not great. But the writing, really good. Characters are really interesting. Again, this is all from reviews. I have not played the game myself. But I'm looking forward to it, because it's my jam. Anyway, That's Master Detective Archives Rain Code, out now. Then we have Crime O'Clock. Crime O'Clock is out on Switch right now. It'll be out on PC the end of this month. Why aren't you going full screen? Thank you. We played Crime O'Clock a little bit on the channel as part of the Steam Next Fest stuff. It is a kind of hidden object type thing, or Where's Wally, or Where's Waldo for our US viewers. You're kind of given the kind of gist of a crime set at some point in antiquity. So there's some time traveling going on. And you basically need to retrace the steps by trying to find the different, like the victims, the perpetrators and stuff like that, and sort of follow them through the scene as you jump back in time or jump forward in time. It's interesting at the beginning. What I've read from reviews is that it never really evolves beyond that. You know, the mechanic is kind of the same every time. So if you like the kind of hidden object type thing, I guess you'll enjoy it, because that's pretty much all the game is. But if you don't, or if you're expecting something more, it sounds like there isn't really anything more to it. What I will say is that when we played it, it wasn't just... I mean, the main thrust of the game is to follow like the crime around the map. But a fun thing to check out also is that the map itself has lots of like funny little hidden scenes in it. I did see one that was basically like the origin of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is pretty funny because you could just follow that through. That was really good. But there's a lot of other things going on that are just like little funny jokes that have nothing to do with the crimes or the story or anything like that, but they're just in there. Like, they have to fill up space, obviously, because it would be too easy to spot everything. If the only thing that was there was entirely story relevant, the game would be way too easy. So they got to fill up the map with other things. And what they fill it up with is really funny. So, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Anyway. Goodbye World. Goodbye World is another kind of half and half game. So it is a story of two college friends who want to make a video game, and half of that game is you playing that video game, and the other half of it is them having to go about their day job because, you know, they need to also make money to make rent and what have you. So half of it is the kind of depressing, you know, your dreams are being squashed kind of thing, and that you've had to take on a 9-to-5 job in retail or in the office or whatever, while in your downtime trying to develop this game at the same time, and the kind of, you know, realizations that come from, is this game actually going to be any good? Is it going to, you know, are we going to be able to quit our jobs and just focus on this full time when it's out, and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's a little close to home for me. I've mentioned in a couple of streams, I mean, I went to university for video game design and stuff like that, and that is what I wanted to get into. But global economic recession and downturn meant I couldn't really do that. I had to take a proper job. A real human adult man job. Anyway. I don't know if I want to play this. It's a little on the nose. Anyway, that's Goodbye World. That is out on Switch. I think it's just Switch. I'm not sure. And then a couple of remakes. So the first one is Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. Again, we played this on the channel recently, again as part of Steam Next Fest. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective was a DS game, exclusive to the DS. Only ever got one entry, no sequels. Anyone who's played it just says go play Ghost Trick. From the small amount that we played on the demo, I would have to agree, because it looks like a really fun game. It is by the same creative team that did the Ace Attorney games. So it's got that kind of, you know, over-the-top characters, the same kind of art design, the same kind of tone to a lot of things. You know, it doesn't take itself extremely seriously, other than this part where the guy kills a dog. But don't worry about it, you can save the dog. Don't worry, he doesn't stay dead. Missile, the dog, who I had to give a Sean Connery voice to because somebody asked me to. Anyway, I don't know, go watch that stream. I'm really excited to play Ghost Trick Phantom Detective because it's a game that completely passed me by, and it is one I've always wanted to play, but I've not owned a DS. And I've not really had the time to go out and do the whole emulation situation thing. So I'd be looking forward to play that. Anyway, that's Ghost Trick Phantom Detective out now. And then another remake is Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, which is, I think it's a remake of like the second Harvest Moon. Something like that. So people who may not be aware, the Harvest Moon series is effectively Stardew Valley before Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley very much takes a ton of inspiration from the Harvest Moon series. A Wonderful Life kind of goes a little bit further in that you have like a full... in the same way Stardew Valley kind of added it in later, where you could have a family, you know, you could have kids and what have you. A Wonderful Life goes that far as well. You have a baby, the baby grows up, helps you out on the farm, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's that kind of game. If you're into that kind of thing, check it out. From what I've read again from reviews and what have you, it's a remake of an old game. And they don't really add a whole lot to it. So it's gonna feel a bit old, obviously, from mechanics wise. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good for preservation of these kind of games. I'd be interested to play it. Maybe not at the price it's at right now, but I'd be interested to play it. Anyway, Story of Seasons. However, it is now time to talk about the worst parts of video games. Video game industry. So, the news story that will not die. The Xbox trials that could change everything. 7 bombshell reveals. Number 6 will shock you. So this is the FTC Microsoft trial that is ongoing right now. The FTC is looking for an injunction to prevent the merger from going through in July before they've had their full review of the merger in August. The worry is that Microsoft and Activision will merge anyway and just pay a fine or whatever when the FTC come back to it. Because at that point, legally, I don't think they'll be able to really extricate themselves from it. So some bombshells, allegedly. Some of these are less bombshell than the others, but what have you. Microsoft discussed spending Sony out of business. So this is some redacted emails from Matt Booty. Back in 2019, he discussed spending Sony out of business because Microsoft had it. You know, Xbox have Big Daddy Microsoft with all the money because practically every PC on the planet runs Windows. They have a lot of money at their disposal. So they would be able to effectively outspend Sony rather easily. And the idea was it would probably be super worth it to just, you know, spend 2 billion, 3 billion, whatever, to just buy their way to the top of the market kind of thing. Because they felt that Sony is really the only other player who could compete with Game Pass, and we have a 2-year and 10 million subs lead. We could double down on our early advantage with Game Pass to corner the market on subscription gaming. So doubling down meaning we're just going to buy a load of shit to add to Game Pass. It was felt that lots of shade, in fact, thrown at Tencent, Google, Amazon, to basically say that they've tried and they have not been successful to get into the market. So it's still really only Sony is the big player right now. We can just outspend them. Allegedly, they have changed their mind since then, but citation needed. Cloud gaming ambitions fueled an Xbox Series X shortage. Allegedly, the main reason behind the shortage was because of investments in cloud gaming and content services. I kind of feel this is bullshit because Sony had the same problem with PS5s. It was a chip shortage. And they're trying to say that the reason there was not as many Xbox Series X's around is because they were focused on cloud hardware and stuff like that. No. The reason was because there was a chip shortage. Everyone was affected by the same thing. I don't get where they're going with this one, but whatever. Bethesda was this one is actually really interesting. Bethesda was blindsided by promises to keep Call of Duty multi-platform. So the gist here is that Brad Smith back in February 2022, when they were talking about the Activision merger and stuff like that. They were promising to keep Blizzard and Activision IPs, Call of Duty, Diablo, Overwatch. They were planning to keep them multi-platform. And Pete Hines, president of Bethesda, so Bethesda is Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Starfield, that kind of thing. He said, "Huh? Why does Activision get to remain multi-platform and Bethesda doesn't? What's the deal with that?" So Pete Hines was surprised because Redfall and Starfield and other games were seemingly forced to become Xbox exclusives after the ZeniMax acquisition. He was kind of frustrated because Todd Howard was going to be going out to do interviews and stuff about Starfield, and then this news that Call of Duty and whatever would be kept multi-platform. The obvious question would be, is Starfield going to be multi-platform, you know? And Pete Hines was annoyed because they weren't given a heads up or anything. And did they think, do you think Todd isn't going to be asked this question? You know, we really should have known ahead of time you were going to do this. And then also, why does Activision get to be multi-platform and Bethesda doesn't? He sent this then to Phil Spencer. Is the below not the opposite of what we were just asked or told to do with our titles? I understand that there's likely more nuance here, but at its core, it's being read as the opposite of what happened with us. So, like, yeah, what's the deal here? Why are Bethesda games exclusive, but Activision games are not? And of course, the answer will be Activision games won't be exclusive, which is where Sony is coming from. Anyway. Moving on, Fallout 76 came to PlayStation Plus because it needed more players, which is hilarious. So again, I believe this is from Phil Spencer to the ZeniMax president at the time. It feels like we either need to see this thing, Fallout 76, getting to 10 million monthly active users across all platforms, or decide to move on from it. And if you believe PlayStation Now can support it gaining relevance, then I am supportive. So they're not above bringing their exclusive games to PlayStation specifically, if it will get them more money. And you could honestly argue that bringing Starfield to PlayStation would get them more money. Bringing Redfall, okay, maybe not Redfall, bringing other games to the platform will get them more money, but what have you. The very next month, Fallout 76 came to Sony's Game Pass competitor, and it got them the 10 million monthly active users. So they're not above bringing the games to PlayStation and to PlayStation Plus specifically, but they seem to be a little choosy on which games they're going to bring. It was dropped that the Hitman IO Interactive's next game, this kind of MMO shooter fantasy thing, is probably going to be Xbox exclusive. It hasn't necessarily been confirmed, but it has come up on a lot of their things saying that it's going to be like launching into Game Pass and stuff like that. Huge shade thrown at IO Interactive though. So as they were talking about a bunch of different people they were going to acquire, you know, who are we going to buy next kind of thing. IO Interactive was brought up, and it was stated that IO Interactive has not been able to ship a successful new original IP since Hitman. And it's like, ouch. Oh, it's gotta burn. It's true as well, but oh, it's gotta burn. Ouch. On top of IO Interactive, though, a bunch of other developers were mentioned that who's Microsoft going to throw all of their money at next? Bungie was brought up, top tier AAA first-person shooter. However, the company is known for its high burn rate. As it turned out, Sony were okay with that. They bought them first. Housemarque, ability to deliver a steady flow of content for the Game Pass. However, they have an extensive relationship with Sony. Sony have bought them now. Remedy, the guys behind Control, Alan Wake, one of the last remaining independent AAA narrative-driven games, are developers. However, their next two games are stuck with the Epic Games Store, so it's possible they may want to stay like that. Larian, the guys behind Original Sin, or Divinity Original Sin, and Baldur's Gate 3 on the way. The con with them was that their development team is dispersed between many, many locations, so it might be a bit of a nightmare to hang on to. Supergiant, the developer behind Hades and Bastion and Transistor and so on, they really wanted to stay indie. So you would have to throw a shit ton of money at them, I guess, to get them on board. Or maybe you might ever be able to get them on board. Playdead. Is Playdead Rocket League? I don't know. Anyway, the con with them was that they have very long development periods. 11-Bit Studios, the Frostpunk guys, and a lot of other games they have coming out soon as well. They felt the games appear too niche and goes against serving a wider audience, which is not a con in my book. You guys are going to want a diversity of games on Game Pass. You don't want games that are just bland, lowest common denominator, because that's what Sony is doing. People will just go to PlayStation for that. You're going to want diversity, which means niche. Anyway. And then Thunderful can make very high Metacritic scoring games. However, they've yet to release an actual hit game, which I guess is fair. Spiritfarer is a good game, but yeah, it didn't exactly set the world on fire when it came out. Anyway, that's not all that was going on in the FTC Microsoft, because there were other apparent bombshells that Kotaku didn't feel merited mentioning. Sony boss Jim Ryan doesn't like Starfield exclusivity, but doesn't deem it anti-competitive. So Jim Ryan was brought in. Jim Ryan, currently head of PlayStation, was brought in to give, not deposition, just because it's not a criminal case. I don't know what the word you'd give. Interview, I guess. He was brought in to kind of talk about some emails that were found through Discovery, to talk about PlayStation's whole view of the merger and that kind of thing. He was asked directly if he had any issues with Redfall or Starfield being exclusive. He said, "I don't like it, but I don't consider it anti-competitive." He did add, however, that he initially expected that these releases would not be exclusive, as basically every Bethesda game had been multi-platform prior to the acquisition. I mean, shocked Pikachu face, honestly. Ryan had previously revealed that he didn't believe the merger was an Xbox exclusivity play, but had changed his mind after an email exchange with Phil Spencer in August of last year. The contents of this exchange have been heavily redacted, so we don't really know what was actually said in the exchange, but apparently it set alarm bells ringing for Sony, and this is when they started coming out against the merger. Up until then, Jim Ryan seemed to be okay with what he had heard from Phil Spencer and Bobby Kotick at the time, but whatever was going on in that email, he did not like it. The small bits that we do know about the email exchange is that Phil Spencer had essentially sent over a list of IP that would still be on PlayStation, and the feeling from Jim Ryan was that these are all kind of old games. None of these are new games, and none of these are games that are currently in development, and so on. So the idea was we'd get PlayStation fanboy in me, sorry, that PlayStation would get essentially Activision's back catalog, but nothing new. And I guess that was what set them off. He also decided to take a swing at Game Pass. They stated that publishers, not just Sony, publishers in general, unanimously do not like Game Pass because it is value destructive, which would possibly explain why some of the bigger publishers don't have their games on Game Pass. Microsoft appears to be losing a lot of money on it, according to Jim Ryan. Sony has never approached Activision about adding any games to PlayStation Plus because he knows that Bobby Kotick has been very public and very vocal that he did not see that as a route he wanted to take Activision Blizzard down. The obvious follow-on being that it would be a route he doesn't want to take. Game Pass is arguably less value to a publisher. PlayStation Plus tends to be not day and date with the release. You have your release window and then a little while later it joins PlayStation Plus, which, you'd still have your diehard fans who would buy the game outright and then maybe some people who would wait for it to join PlayStation Plus. Whereas Game Pass, you don't get that window. You just get it on Game Pass. I mean, yeah, if you don't have Game Pass, you would just buy the game outright, but at this point, if you have an Xbox and don't have Game Pass, I don't know what you're doing, really. Anyway, speaking of Bobby saying that, it was later, I'm not sure it'll come up now because I don't think I kept the article, but it did come up that Bobby said, yeah, I don't think Game Pass or PlayStation Plus are a good route to take the series down. He was then asked, would that not be an issue? Why are you going through with the merger? Because you know the games will end up on Game Pass because of it. And Bobby basically said, I am beholden to shareholders, yada, yada, yada. That's what they want. They voted unanimously for the merger, so legally I am obligated to do that. Also, I'm going to get a huge fucking payout from it. Anyway. This is next bit about why the Switch isn't considered a competitor for Xbox and Sony. Activision's Call of Duty does not perform well on Nintendo consoles. It's kind of difficult when it isn't even on Nintendo consoles, but okay. Very different audience than the standard Nintendo audience that enjoys Mario and Zelda. Wow. You can't be a fan of Mario and Zelda and Call of Duty, apparently, according to Jim Ryan. Go fit neatly in your pigeonhole, please. How dare you? How dare you enjoy different things? Sony does not consider Nintendo a direct competitor. Ryan said the Xbox brand is more popular in the US than other areas, and again, throwing people directly into their own pigeonhole. The majority of their games, many of their games, involve an element of shooting, and many of their games involve elements of online multiplayer, both of which typically are more popular in the US than they are outside of the US. Mountain Dew Dorito boys are the only people who like Xbox, apparently. The reason Xbox does well in the US is because it's a US company. That's why it does well. That's it. Like, the majority of their games would be Xbox first-party games involve an element of shooting. It's Halo, that's it. What else do they have that's a shooter? Xbox specifically now, first-party. And not after their recent merger, because this is like the brand itself, going all the way back to the original Xbox. What else do they have that's exclusive to Xbox that's a shooter with online multiplayer? Because I'm pretty sure it's only Halo. Call of Duty was not an exclusive. They sure fucking tried to make it exclusive, but it wasn't. That doesn't count. Battlefield, also not an exclusive. Or Battlefront, rather. Not an exclusive. Fear wasn't exclusive. I'm trying to remember. I'm not a shooter fan, so I'm racking my brain for these. Wolfenstein, not an exclusive. Doom, not an exclusive. It would be now, as I've just named a bunch of fucking developers that they've bought since. But at the time, no. So where's he going with that? The whole gist of Xbox was that it appealed because it was a US brand, not a Japanese brand. And it appealed to dude bros. You know, this is where that whole name came from. Came from fucking Xbox. Mountain Dew, Doritos, frat bros playing Call of Duty well into the night. That's where the Xbox brand was. That's where it started. Not arguably is where it went with 360. They tried to excuse me. They tried to claw it back at the end of the 360 reign into Xbox One, and then they absolutely tanked it at E3, and PlayStation 4 ran away with it. But I don't know where he's going with that. Anyway. And then this last thing that I think we knew about last week, where he said that they would not give prospective PS6 developer kits to Activision if they were owned by Microsoft, because, you know, it would be giving too much information to a competitor, effectively, which, you know, makes sense. I know. On the other hand, if they were going to make Call of Duty multi-platform, they would have to give development kits. Or they would have to be okay with... They'd have to be okay with Call of Duty PS6 or whatever, coming like a year later, 2 years later. because they're not going to give them development kits at the same time. So if there was going to be a Call of Duty launch for PS6, Xbox, whatever the fuck they call it, if they wanted to launch one, they would have to give them development kits early, like before the console itself had actually come out, because they need time to develop for it, obviously. I'm not sure it precludes them from giving them development kits ever. Like, if the console's already out, if Microsoft wanted to know anything about the PS6, they could just, get their own one and strip it down and figure out how it works. Anyway, moving on. In a terribly redacted document. So, unlike a lot of the other redacted documents where we couldn't really get any information out of it, this one was very poorly redacted in that you could absolutely still tell what it said underneath the black marks. So, The Last of Us Part 2 and Horizon Forbidden West cost Sony way too much fucking money. $200 million to develop each. And that's kind of averaging it across the two of them. It actually costs more. Last of Us Part 2 cost more than that, I think. $220 million for The Last of Us Part 2, $212 million for Horizon Forbidden West. So this is how much money Sony is spending on their first-party games. I.e., way too much money for very little. Like, what is so different in Last of Us Part 2, Horizon Forbidden West, whatever? What's so different from that from, like, Uncharted 2? Or Infamous, or anything like that did not have this kind of ridiculous budget? No. There's no wonder that modern Sony thinks that they need to only pick games that they know for definite will sell really well, because they're spending ridiculous amounts of money on it. How about you cut that budget in half, then cut that budget in half again and make some smaller games? Yeah? Not put all your eggs in one basket and have like 2 releases a year? Anyway, ridiculous. This document was then removed from court later because of how badly it was redacted. Anyway, also we had like player data and revenue data for a couple of different games, but the more important one, because it's kind of at the center of the FTC Microsoft thing, is Call of Duty. And depressing figure is that 1 million PlayStation console users spend 100% of their time playing Call of Duty. They bought a Call of Duty box. That's very depressing. Anyway, the franchise accounts for $800 million US dollars of revenue for Sony in 2021, at 1 point that's only of US revenue, and then globally it was $1.5 billion. So that's a lot of money for Sony in particular. And if you are assuming a 70-30 split, or possibly an 80-20 split, as Bobby was able to get out of Xbox, possibly you could have got it out of PlayStation as well, that's a lot of money for Activision as well. So it would make sense that Microsoft would want to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation, because holy shit, they'll basically get almost all of that money. Anyway, 1 million consoles spend all of their time playing Call of Duty. Nothing else. That's some depressing shit right there. Anyway, moving on. We're not done. We're not done with the FTC Microsoft shit. Okay, Microsoft CEO, and not Xbox CEO, Microsoft CEO, claims he'd love to get rid of console exclusives entirely. You guys fucking started this. He decides to blame Sony for the exclusivity thing, forgetting that Xbox 360 PS2 era, Xbox 360 PS3 era was all about Microsoft throwing their money at different things for exclusivity, but okay. According to Satya Nadella, it has been his philosophy to make software available on as many platforms as possible, except PlayStation, I guess. Asked if he's aware that Xbox has some games that are exclusive to its consoles, Nadella claimed this is necessary for Microsoft to compete in a playing field dictated by its more dominant rival, Sony. You started this. Not him specifically, but Microsoft started the whole exclusivity thing. This wasn't a thing in the Xbox PS2 era. It only became a thing in the 360 era, where they started making Mass Effect exclusive, Jade Empire, actually basically everything from BioWare exclusive. Bunch of Call of Duty stuff was exclusive. Dead Space was exclusive for a while. Tomb Raider was exclusive. I'm racking my brain. I'm sure there are more. The whole point of it is you started it. And now you're claiming it's Sony's fault. If it was up to me, I would love to get rid of the entire sort of exclusives on consoles, but that's not for me to define, especially as a low share player in the console market. That the dominant player there has defined market competition using exclusives, and so that's the world we live in. You did this to yourself. I mean, I would also love to get rid of exclusives, but trying to blame Sony for just doing what you did. I mean, Sony shouldn't be doing it, but like trying to blame them for it is a bit rich. Anyway, all right, we're gonna move away from the FTC thing and instead talk about CD Projekt Red and their rose-colored glasses and their victim mentality on the whole Cyberpunk thing. So this is actually a fairly extensive interview with their head of PR. They were talking about... It's mostly talking about how Cyberpunk was received when it was released. Not well. The company had openly admitted that it needed crunch to get it done, which is obviously not good. When it was released, it simply wasn't ready and is one of the biggest disasters in industry history. It was so bad that PlayStation removed the game from the store entirely. I don't think they've done that to any other... They certainly haven't done it to any AAA game other than this. I'm sure they might have done it to some smaller indie games, but they definitely have not done it to a big AAA game before. I was personally not happy with how things turned out, and I was not expecting that. They were not expecting it to be received this poorly. How? How are you not expecting it? Just play the game. How are you not expecting it to be received that poorly? It reminds me of what was said when Redfall came out. And they were saying, our internal reviews, didn't highlight that the game was boring as fuck. Do they not play their own games? Like, how did they not notice? Anyway, CG Projekt had grown rapidly and managing the teams was proving challenging. And the company had become known for its crunch culture. It's really hard to change a company when you have to deliver something and you have a deadline. So they're claiming that the reason Cyberpunk kind of fell apart was the team just got really big, really, really fast. And the crunch aspect of it meant they didn't see that a lot of systems weren't coming together the way they wanted it to. And it's really hard to change a company when you have to deliver something and you have a deadline. CD Projekt Red independently published Cyberpunk. The deadline is arbitrary. It's not being set by a publisher. It's not being set by an investment group. It's not being set by some C-suite thing. You guys make the game and publish it yourselves. The deadline is entirely arbitrary too. You could have absolutely stopped to deal with the problems. Absolutely, you could have stopped. This is entirely on your own head. But no, apparently they had no choice but to crunch. Anyway, there's a lot more to this interview. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just picking out some concerning parts. There are still concerns about whether the company is still stretching itself too much because CD Projekt has announced like 8 games that they're working on right now. Oh, we're not working on them all at the same time, yada, yada, yada. I guess we'll see. So this is kind of the shit bit. And the bit where it's like, you guys really don't remember how the game launched at all, really, do you? I actually believe Cyberpunk on launch was way better than it was received, and even the first reviews were positive. Then it became a cool thing not to like it. We went from hero to zero really fast. No, people played the game. Remember? Nobody believed the reviews. Because when they played the game, they went straight to Twitter and went, look at these hilarious bugs. That was the first thing everybody saw. Before anybody read a review. For any of that. Everyone saw on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube, ridiculous bugs for Cyberpunk. And tons of them. Way too many. Way too many for them to be outliers. He's trying to say that it became a cool thing not to like it. No. It became a consumer thing not to like it. It was bad. Your product was bad. So bad that PlayStation took it off the shop. That's pretty bad. They don't do that for really any game. Just look at the fucking PlayStation Store. There's some garbage on that, and they haven't taken any of that off. How bad was your game? Now, allegedly, I've been told it's better now. I haven't played it yet, so I don't know. And also allegedly, the Phantom Liberty update, the free update, not necessarily just the DLC stuff, has also massively improved the game. Again, don't know. Haven't played it, but that's what I've heard. And you could also say this is the head of PR and he's meant to put on like a nice face to the company and what have you, but that's some revisionist shit right there. That it was cool to just not like Cyberpunk at the time. No, it was reality that people didn't like it. Anyway, moving on. Studio behind one of 2023's best games just laid off a ton of devs. This is a stretch that Season, A Letter to the Future, is one of 2023's best games. It's barely a game. Now, I like Season, but it's barely a game. Anyway, it got a lot of good reviews, was well received by the press, but did not sell well. Shock. But that didn't stop the studio behind it from recently laying off over half of its developers. The game only managed to sell 60,000 copies in its first 5 months. That's terrible. Like, that's really bad. That's extremely bad, actually. Anyway, this means that we'll have to part ways with all but approximately 16 members of the Scavenger Studios team. I believe they're like 80 people altogether, so that's a huge cut to the team. It's not a decision I took lightly. It's been several months and efforts of just fucking trying to see what we could do, who we could talk to, how can we leverage more funds, but we just can't make it work. So the idea now is that they will go back to making stuff like the original game that they made. The original game is the Darwin Project, which is more of a Battle Royale kind of thing. So I guess they'll go more into like action-y type things. Like I said, I liked Season. But one, it was a PlayStation exclusive, and two, it was hugely niche, and then wasn't on PlayStation Plus. Like, I really feel like they probably would have made more money going PlayStation Plus. Considering it was only 60, it's like 60,000 is a tiny amount. Like, I know it seems like it's a big, less 5 digits, but it's not. It's so little. Like, that's a huge bust. And it's disappointing because I do think people should play it, but also Kotaku trying to say it's the best game, one of the best games? No. It's not even in the top 20. Anyway. Some other things to go into this article is that the developer also had an alleged toxic working environment that was talked about last year, maybe a year before that. They eventually initiated a review of the studio, and the head of the studio was later reinstated after the investigation found that there was no systemic sexual or psychological harassment at the studio. It was more or less isolated to just one person who was let go. Former Scavengers developer, when talking about this thing, said, "I also do not feel comfortable with Scavengers being praised as a fun, cool, indie, inclusive place." So while it mightn't have the sexual harassment aspects to it, it's perhaps not exactly a nice place to work. Then they kind of go into the some of the reviews for the game. And Edge magazine gave it a 9, lauding the game's incisive writing. Yeah, okay, there is good writing. And then impactful dialogue choices. Your choices make zero difference in the game. I've played it, finished it, platinumed it. Your choices make no difference. They change what words are used. That's it. That's all it changes. You know, the game story doesn't diverge massively because of it. It doesn't diverge at all. I don't know. Anyway, did they finish the game when they reviewed it? Moving on. Good Old Games Yakuza series release omits key developer credits. So this is the GOG port for a bunch of Yakuza games has omitted the credits of some of its developers. Most notably, the creator, Toshiori Nagoshi, as well as the producer, Daisuke Saito. So this isn't GOG's fault. They didn't mandate that these things be removed. This is almost certainly Sega. And it is almost certainly Sega getting back at these developers because they left the studio to found their own development studio. So last year, Nagoshi formed a new NetEase game development studio, and he was joined by Saito and a bunch of other Sega alumni. It'll be shocked to know that those other Sega alumni that worked on Yakuza, their names are also missing from the credits. So this is most definitely punitive revenge removal of the credits. Kind of shit. But on top of that, the team responsible for porting Yakuza to PC, they're also not in the credits, that one is legitimately shitty. Like, there's no reason for them not to be in the credits, because it is literally a PC port on GOG. Like, why aren't their names in the credits? Like, it is super shit that, like, the actual creator of the series and the people who worked on the original games aren't there. Or rather, the ones who left Sega aren't there. But I get why they're not there. I don't get why the PC port guys aren't. Like, it's shitty why they're not. But I don't even get the shitty reason for why the PC port guys aren't there. Anyway, this is unlikely to be changed. This is very much a Japanese thing. It's disloyalty to the company, and this is how it is rewarded. Anyway. And then, I think this is our last news story. Lord of the Rings Gollum studio, Daedalic, reportedly lays off 25 employees, exiting game development entirely. So, yeah, they were so roundly dunked on that they just went, you know what, we're just not going to make games anymore. So Daedalic is reportedly set to exit game development and has laid off around 25 employees. Additionally, the second Lord of the Rings game that was in development has now been cancelled. Reminder, Gollum received a 1 out of 5 on pretty much everywhere. It was roundly panned. So Daedalic have made the decision to shift away from development and solely into publishing. So up until now, Daedalic kind of did both. They developed their own games and then published a lot of like point and click stuff. So now, because of how poorly Gollum was received, they have decided, all right, we're just going to focus on the publishing bit. So they have reduced the employees from 25 employees out of a team of 90. So that is a pretty, it's pretty shit for them. Daedalic have said that they will look to move them to developers within their like publishing portfolio. So like, hey, do you want to work for this guy who we've published their games before? Maybe they have an opening, etc., etc. So hopefully they'll be able to find another place. Yeah, like it's shit. These things do happen. Gollum should never have been released in the state it was in. It should probably have been cancelled a good while before that. It's possible they were under either contract requirements that the game be released or a licensing thing to keep the Lord of the Rings license. They may have had to release something. A lot of license agreements are like, if you haven't released something within 10 years of gaining the license, it's gone. And if you want to keep it, well, one, you got to pay for it, but you also have to show that you're using it. You know, you can't just tie up the license, which is obviously to stop competitors from just, yeah, we'll buy the license and then never make anything with it. But yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not. It's somewhat Schadenfreude. Yes, you made a shit game, and now you just left the game development entirely. But at the same time, there are people who have, lost their jobs. Hopefully, they do get something, and they can continue to work in games development if that's what they want. After working on Gollum, they may not want to do that anyway. We're going to finish off with something dumb, but also somewhat depressing. Macron, at time of broadcast, there are riots going on in Paris, in France, after a police officer shot a 17-year-old delivery driver. And apparently the reason they're rioting now is because video games. Not ridiculous police brutality. No, video games. Video games are the reason. And TikTok as well. Definitely not systemic issues within the police force against minority groups. It's not just the US, guys. Happens in France too. Happens everywhere, actually. But yeah, we're still trotting that one out, though. Video games. Macron doesn't just think it's those dang phone apps that are to blame for the ongoing protests, he also turned his attention towards video games. We sometimes have the feeling that some of them are living out in the streets the video games that have intoxicated them, he said. Fuck you. Anyway, it's not like this is the first time they've tried to say, but the video games are ruining our kids. Because they said that when I was a kid. Oh, that was a long time ago. That was a very long time ago. Oh god, I'm so old. Yeah, that's not new. And if it was actually true that video games cause violence or what have you, there'd be so much more violence in the world. Tons. Way more. Ridiculous. Like, unlivable, society-destroying levels of violence because so many people play video games. If they were actually responsible for that. Anyway. We will leave Master Detective to play. Anyway, that is the news for the 26th of June to the 2nd of July 2023. A lot of stuff coming out of Annapurna. The Blade Runner game, we don't know a whole lot about it, but it's interesting. It's got an interesting vibe to it. I'm there. I'm there for it. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, we need to know more. I'm very intrigued, but we need to know more. Bounty Star, similarly intrigued. Mech combat could be cool. I'm glad to see mechs are coming back. I know. I'm glad to see they're coming back. Hopefully we'll have the mech renaissance soon. Fort Solace, the fact that we know so little about the game and it's out really soon is kind of worrying. Scorn coming to PS5. Okay. To be honest, I'm not super invested in the game. I know some people really like it, but it's gross. It's gross, okay, guys? I don't want to play it. It's disgusting. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, Perfect Dark development has been rebooted. Yeah, big shock there. The whole FTC Microsoft thing continues to rumble on. They had their closing arguments this week. So probably Monday or Tuesday we'll know what the judge has decided, if it's going to grant the FTC their injunction or not. Basically, if it grants the injunction, that means Microsoft effectively is going to have a very long litigation period of appeals, which will put out the merger for like a year, which means it's going to be very expensive to go through all those appeals and stuff like that. Potentially Microsoft may back off on the merger if that's the case, even if they don't win the FTC review. If the FTC do not get their injunction, they'll probably appeal it for one, but if they don't get the injunction, Microsoft is free to merge with Activision before July and just pay a fine later on. However, they still have issues with the UK. The UK have not okayed it. So they still have to deal with the CMA, the Consumer something Association. So they still have that. And then Canada weighed in earlier this week to say that they were also reviewing the merger. And then Microsoft went back to say, you missed your window to object, bro. Fuck you. On one hand, hilarious, but on the other hand, are you really gonna tempt them to just go, nah, we're just gonna do it anyway. We're like a sovereign nation and you're a company. Good luck with that. I mean, the company is Microsoft, but you know, they could say something about that. Anyway, that was that. CD Projekt Red forgetting how badly Cyberpunk launched and trying to say that no, it was It was just a meme to not like Cyberpunk when it launched. It was actually fine when it launched. It's like, you've completely forgotten what the game was like when it launched. That's ridiculous. Anyway, moving on. So that was our news, but what is happening on the channel this week? So, just gotta find the thing that I use. Right. So here is our game roadmap, game mosaic, whatever, for the first half of 2023. Calendar fans among you will know it's no longer the first half of 2023. So this is kind of how far we got. That's how far we got in January to June, the end of June for 2023. The idea was I'd feature all of these games on the channel over those 6 months. If there's a green tick on it, I did it. I managed to do it. If there's a yellow symbol on it, it means it's currently ongoing. I didn't manage to finish featuring it, but I started featuring it. And then basically everything else I didn't manage to get around to it. So stuff like Outer Wilds, didn't get to it. The original Final Fantasy, didn't get to it. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and so on and so forth. So some of these will be carried through into next month, or into the second half of 2023. And some of them I just, you know what, I'm actually not interested in them anymore. So the second half of 2023 is going to look like this. So the 3 games that we are currently playing on the channel are still there. Final Fantasy 16, Diablo, and Monster Hunter World are still there because they're still being played. And then I've added a lot of other games. Some of them we carried over from the last roadmap. Some of them are brand new. So stuff like Armored Core Fires of Rubicon will be out later this year. Starfield, if it works on Steam Deck, we'll give that a shot. Assassin's Creed Mirage, Alan Wake 2, Hollow Body, Replace, we don't actually know. That may slip into 2024. In fact, a lot of these don't have release dates yet. We'll see if they actually make it into 2024. Hopefully they will. Stuff like Stellar Blade, Hell Is Us, Slitherhead, like a couple of them don't have release dates yet. So maybe they'll make it in, maybe they won't. But that is kind of the deal for 2020, or for July to December of 2023. That's what we're going to be doing. We'll see if I manage it this time, if I can manage to get all of them. Anyway, last week we played Dordogne, which is this kind of, how to explain it? It's like a kind of visual novel, meditative type game where you play Mimi, who has had a kind of nervous breakdown, seems to have lost a sizable chunk of her childhood memory. She goes back to her grandmother's home because her grandmother has allegedly left a box of things there for her. Her grandmother has recently passed away. And as she's there, she starts to remember this one summer that she spent with her grandmother. So half of the game is you reminiscing about it, and the other half is you in present day just going through the house and stuff like that. It's a very pretty game. It's not necessarily a great game to play, but it's a very pretty game to look at least. I don't know, I need to play a bit more of it. We played it as part of my Foley Plays Games a Bit series, so there's a little bit of it. The VOD should be up now over on YouTube, youtube.com/Doom25 if you want to check it out. This is the Switch trailer for it, but it is on PlayStation and PC as well. I'm not sure about Xbox. Anyway, that was Dordogne. Then myself and Melwin played A Way Out. We finished that on Friday. Our friendship may or may not have survived the Let's Play. I don't know, because shenanigans. The betrayals may or may not have happened. Somebody's true colors may or may not have come out. Who knows? You'll have to check that out. You'll have both my viewpoint and Melwin's viewpoint on what transpired in A Way Out. You can check both of those out over on our respective YouTube channels, youtube.com/doomtrain5 and youtube.com/melwin26. You can find either of those. Myself and Melwin our friendship has managed to survive long enough that we're going to play another game this week at some point. We'll see. I know, she might change her mind. So going into this week, we're going to continue Diablo. Last week we defeated the Butcher, we defeated King Leoric, and we are now down into the Catacombs. I stopped early because we encountered an enemy that reduces your stats every time they hit you. Wow, fuck that enemy. So yeah, I stopped because I need to find a way to actually deal with that enemy first. And I think I know how to do it now, and I've also discovered that they don't actually lower your stats every hit. They lower your maximum health every hit instead, permanently. Every time you are hit by them, you take whatever damage the attack does, and then -1 to your maximum health every time. And you can be swarmed by these things. So fuck that enemy. Fuck that enemy very much. Anyway, I think I know how I'm going to deal with them now, so we'll get back to Diablo this week. Also, we're playing more Final Fantasy 16. This is a very, very new game, so I'm not even going to tell you where exactly we are in the game. But I am very much enjoying it and looking forward to playing more of it this week. Yeah, that's going to be a quick one. So myself and Melwin will be looking to play Shredder's Revenge at some point this week. If our schedules line up, we'll make it happen. If not, it'll be the week after. So Shredder's Revenge is a modern TMNT beat 'em up styles of Streets of Rage, or the old TMNT video arcade games, where you play the turtles, you beat up the Foot Clan, etc. It's fun times, and we'll be playing that. Is that the last thing in this, or did I have another one? No, that was the last one. Okay. Anyway. However, people who have been watching the channel long enough will know that that's not enough games. There's at least one more that needs to fit into that slot. And you're right. You are right, fans. Fan, singular. I'm sure there's only one. I need a new Foley Fable, basically. So I have the 19 Foley Fables that I cannot choose between, so I'm going to let this picker thing choose for me. There's 19 of them, so in order to ensure that one of them gets 2, we're going to spin it 20 times. Now, don't worry, I've made the spin really, really short, so this won't be an issue. And we're basically going to see which one gets the most counts. Okay, so put in your predictions now for which game is going to be coming up. So let's do it. All right, Sinking City's got 1. All right, Vampire the Masquerade, Coteries of New York has got 2. I hope that one doesn't win, because I actually don't want to play that. Brand new game, we just saw it on the news right there. Master Detective Archives Raincode. All right, that's 3. Zero Escape, Time Dilemma, 999. Number 4. Sinking City's taking the lead. Stasis is a really interesting game that I was put onto by the developer from Adios, who was like raving about this game. So I need to check that out. That is our 6th spin. So number 7. Back far while we played a little bit as well. Already on the channel. It's a very funny game. Spin 8. Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templars, the original Broken Sword, point and click, fun times. Number 9. Oxenfree. Oxenfree 2 is coming out soon, so I figure I should play the original. Spin 10. Pentiment. This is like a manuscript, medieval manuscript art style narrative thing from Obsidian. It's really interesting looking. Spin 11. I think we might be playing the Sinking City, guys. Spin 12. Oh, maybe not. Black Firewall's got another one. Spin 13. Oh, Ghost Trick, Phantom Protective. I would really like that to be there. Alright. Spin 14. No. It must have heard me. Spin 15. Pentiment coming in again. Spin 16. No. Spin 17. No. Is it gonna be pipped? Is Sinking City gonna be pipped? Oh no, it came out there again. Spin 18. Norco, you're in here too late. You're not gonna get it. Spin 19. You know, I don't know. I think Sinking City's still ahead. Last spin. And Broken Sword. That's not gonna win it. Alright, so it's either Back Firewall or the Sinking City. So which one is ahead? That's not what I want. That's what I want. Okay, Sinking City. Oh no, it's between the two of them. The Sinking City or Back Firewall are both on 4. So can't believe there's a fucking tie. It's ridiculous. Alright, anyway. Alright. Flip a coin, I guess, between the two of them. So I have my coin. So if it's Skullface, Sinking City, and if it's Pretty Face, Back Firewall. Okay. It's Skullface. Alright, so we're going to be playing the Sinking City. The Sinking City is from the same developer who did the Sherlock Holmes games. It's like a Cthulhu Eldritch thing set in Innsmouth. Fun times. Ish, maybe. The combat's absolute garbage, but otherwise it's kind of good. Okay, so yeah, Sinking City. So I'm going to need to put that in. So Sinking City is going to be on Thursday. So let me just add that in. Is it under T for the Sinking City, or is it under S for the Sinking City? Must be under S. Alright, there it is. So that is our schedule for next week. Tuesday, Foley Fables, The Sinking City. Wednesday, Foley plays Diablo. Thursday, Foley plays Final Fantasy 16. Currently, there's no stream on Friday because I should have D&D. And then Foley and Melwyn play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge on Saturday if we can make it work. And then Sunday, we'll be back right around for the weekly news recap. Right. That's it from me for today. Have a good rest of your day. And hopefully see you guys on Tuesday for the Sinking City. All right. Bye-bye.